facing the police every single day.
And it's frustrating when we have this DNA, but we just don't have enough, not submitting kits. Once upon a time, if they didn't have a suspect, there were different reasons why kits were not submitted. And then when the law was passed that every kit had to be tested, that's when we realized there's a lot of kits out there, and there's a lot more kits than there are people to process those kits.
What are we looking at backlog-wise? How many kits do we think are out there?
We're looking at anywhere between 7,000 and maybe as high as 10,000 kits now.
So what's been the result of testing some of these kits? What have we found out?
We've had 121 matches since they've been uploaded into CODIS, and we've had actually 345 uploaded into CODIS. And so what that tells us is that's good information that we can pass back to law enforcement agencies that submitted those kits, and now they can start trying to put that together with the casework that they're doing.
So what's going to take priority? Is it the new rape test kit that comes in, or some of the backlog?
You can ask, state that, there's a rush, and we have to evaluate that on a case-by-case basis. And so that's the responsibility of the laboratory managers to prioritize those cases depending on what the law enforcement agency shares with us.
Ideal scenario, when would we be able to erase this backlog and address just the kits coming in?
With what we have right now, it would take probably 2.5 to 5 years to clear out all the backlog. Now, when you put the new cases on top of that, I really don't have an answer for that, because we never know day by day how many cases we're going to get in.
For a victim, what does this do for peace of mind?
When the police go out and arrest them and they're prosecuted for their crime, it changes people's lives. It absolutely changes these people's lives. And I think we keep that in our mind, and it's frustrating when we have this DNA, but we just don't have enough people to process it or a large enough lab to process it. But I believe very strongly with the way that technology is moving so quickly forward, this isn't going to be a problem for long.
That's certainly some good news, and soon victims are going to be able to track their rape kits.
Police finally test child rape victims test kit, catch predator 15 years later. Jack Burns, October 27, 2019. Seattle, Washington. One might be tempted to think police officers actually go out and find the bad guys and bring them to justice on a regular basis. However, modern-day police work seems to be more concerned about policing for profit than actually solving crimes. Below is just one of many pitiful examples of how bureaucratic police work has become. One Seattle child rape victim had to wait 15 years for law enforcement to simply do their jobs to identify, charge and convict her rapist. In 2004, J.D., identity withheld out of respect for victims of sexual crimes, was approached by a man who called himself James and asked if she wanted to get high with him. J.D., who was only 15 at the time, made a poor choice and said yes, and the two smoked crack inside a storage shed behind someone's home. That's when she says he raped her. She says she was a virgin and was incredibly ashamed. Yet she found the courage to immediately go to Harborview Medical Center. She spoke about her decision saying, "I wanted to make sure I didn't get pregnant. This was one of the first times I'd ever even had sex, and I didn't know what to expect, what the risks were." JD went through the humiliating experience of allowing a nurse to collect samples from her body to serve as criminal evidence. But because she did not go through with conducting a forensic interview with a sex crimes detective, her case was labeled inactive, was shelved, and was not reopened until 2018. She said she had so many mixed emotions about not prosecuting her perpetrator. "I didn't want to prosecute or do anything because I was so young and I was so ashamed that I'd used drugs that I thought, I just made this happen." While police had evidence of the reported rape, it wasn't until 2018 that the police crime lab actually processed her rape kit. It took no time to find a perfect match. His name wasn't James, it is Michael Anderson, and he was already behind bars for robbing a convenience store. Anderson pleaded guilty for raping JD, was sentenced to an additional 7 years in prison, but may be able to get out after 3 years based on the plea deal he was given. With 10,000 unprocessed raped kids, Seattle is years behind, even decades from being caught up on testing the only evidence some women have proving they've been raped. It could have been decades longer before JD knew who had raped her. But following 2015, things were different in the state of Washington. According to KUOW, in 2015, lawmakers changed state law and mandated that all kids be tested, regardless of what action a police agency took in the case. There's now millions more dollars for the crime lab to process its backlog of rape kits. Yet, even though there was now money and a mandate to test rape kits sitting on police departments' shelves, it still took nearly 2 years for JD's rape kit to be tested. The kit, which was submitted in 2004, sat on the shelf in the evidence locker until the mandate of 2015 forced the kit to be tested. But even though the test was funded and conducted, it still took 2 more years for the results to come back and be returned to the police department. To date, 1,087 rape kits submitted prior to 2015 have been tested, with 36% of those kits being associated with a match. In other words, there's greater than a 30% chance all the rapes prior to 2015 can be solved if the kits would just be examined properly and in a timely manner. Testing these rape kits means more work for the police, as detectives now have to re-evaluate each and every case once the rape kits come back tested. Those investigations could be done more quickly if cops were reassigned from vice squads, or traffic enforcement to the sex crimes division, for example. However, since solving rapes is not as profitable as writing speeding tickets or ticketing people for substances deemed illegal by the state, then rape kits will continue to pile up in evidence lockers all across the U.S.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County COPWATCH. I am using any video here with under fair use. If you have criticism, reporting, teaching, etc. And please donate. I do not make money from YouTube, and there are different ways to donate in the video links. Thanks.